Welcome to Tom Talks. On this episode, we're going to be talking about some Ready Player One technology.
We're also going to tell you about why the Grand Canyon isn't everything it's cracked up to be.
We're talking a bit about the stock market dip, and more specifically, one of the companies, Zillow.
Yeah, as well as how judges are screwing up renters' assistance.
And rental arbitrage. If you've never heard of that, stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is Tom Jung. I am your host for Tom Talks today, and my co-host,
Jack Lisenby.
All right, and so, Jack, did you do anything cool this weekend?
I did actually. I went out past a little town called Euless, which is very far east from here. If you don't know where, or I'm sorry, not Euless, Eustis.
In the Metroplex.
Eustis.
Okay.
Like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Very far east, maybe 2.5 hours past Dallas. So me and my girl, we went out to this little cabin in the woods and just spent the weekend off the grid.
Cool.
Nothing too crazy.
Did you make some stuff out of twigs and?
Kind of. We made we made a small fire that was enough to make some subpar s'mores, and that was about it.
Cool. I went to Mexico.
Oh.
There was a comedy festival down there, and it was really cool. I'd never been to one before, but every day there was a different show to go see and a beautiful resort. It was in Maya Riviera, so one of the nicest places. I didn't even know. It's between Playa and Tulum. I didn't even most people don't know it.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. Nice. So
anyways, if you're going to Mexico, there's a spot to check out. But yeah, Ready Player One. There's a company called Mojo Vision. I ran across this the other day, and I thought it was fascinating. Everybody's talking about the metaverse and everything else.
Yeah.
But this company, I guess they've really been doing a bunch of research. They're very close to having their first prototype. But basically what they're doing is an augmented reality in a contact lens. So basically, as you're walking around looking at stuff, it can give you data on it, which I think is super cool.
That's some cyberpunk
stuff.
Yeah,
I'm a huge tech nerd. And, like that kind of stuff and the stuff that Elon's doing with the implants or whatever. But they just got, I think it was like $50 million from Disney. So Disney has an accelerator program to where there's these technologies they invest in them. So altogether, this company has been invested close to $160 million and so I think this could actually happen here pretty soon. And what was fascinating reading about this, the pixels, well, first of all, my first thought was all of this is going to be ran from the cell phone because you have to have a lot of computing power and everything else.
Right.
They've built everything into the contact lens, which if you think of how small all those components have to be, it's insane.
Yeah, that's amazing because if you think about like the Oculus Rift or Go or whatever their mobile system is, the amount of technology that goes into that and how large it still is.
Right.
As opposed to the size of a contact.
Yeah, it's insane. So they were saying that the pixels, like the individual pixels, are half the size of a blood cell.
That's minuscule.
Yeah, I don't even know, how do you get equipment that works on it? There's so
we can't even get TVs that small.
Yeah, right? Why would you? But yeah. So anyways, that's something that's in the works and something to look out for. Anyways, we talk about random stuff on here that we think is cool. So
yeah, I do think that's really cool, honestly. Big tech nerd myself. But yeah, so I was actually I was talking about the parks this weekend because on Veterans Day, if you don't know, the National Parks Service usually lets people into any national park for free. So they usually have a $10, $20, $30 entry fee depending on the park. And on Veterans Day, which is November 11th, it's going to be free. So you can go to any national park in the U.S. without having to pay an entry fee. They do this. So they also do this on other days. The most notable one for most people is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The other ones are very park specific. So if you're not really into wildlife and nature, you may not know about them. So it's like the National Park Service birthday, the National Public Lands Day, the anniversary of the Great American Outdoors Act, things like that. And
what's our closest national park?
Our closest national park? Oh God, honestly don't know. I would think it's.
We have Yellowstone, don't we?
No.
So there's something similar to that. What's the one out in West Texas?
I honestly don't know. I'm not too familiar with the Texas public parks, to be perfectly honest. I do know that they got a new one coming in the future. They just got donated 1,300 acres, I believe, of national park. Well, what's going to be national park on the coast there in the Gulf.
Oh, cool.
So that one's going to be developed. And actually, speaking of new lands, they're putting in the Texas's first new lake is coming in for, like, in the past 30 years. This is the first one that they put in Bonham, Texas, actually.
Oh, cool.
The Bow Dark Lake.
Yeah. Okay, it's not it's not our first man-made lake.
No. First man-made lake in the last 30 years.
Gotcha.
Reservoir.
Right, and I think that is they're planning ahead for the amount of water that we're going to need in Dallas and Fort Worth from all the growth.
Yes. Yeah. They're planning for the future expansion and everything in that area.
Yeah. And if you didn't know, fun fact, we only have 2 natural lakes in Texas. All these other lakes are man-made.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Flooded rivers.
Yeah.
Mostly.
A little $1 million question right there.
Yeah. I think the 2, I want to say it's Lake Caddo, which is on the Louisiana border, and then Lake Texoma, if that counts. It's really just a really wide river.
Right.
I could be off, but I'm pretty sure those are it.
And for any of the active duty or veterans out there, they're also, just for 2021, they're also having the 14th as a free entry day as well. So that's this Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
So any of the military out there, they get another day free.
Shout out to the military. There you go.
Yeah. The reason I brought all that up was because I was thinking about
you're out in the woods this weekend.
Oh, that yes, which I'm pretty sure was a reserve. They did have a thing where if you left a mess, you would be fined for X amount of dollars, and it was going to go to natural reserve programs.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But no, we were. I was talking with my girl about the time we went to the Grand Canyon National Park, and it was really interesting. So we were out in Arizona, which, by the way, that was over there was where I had the best tacos of my life.
Okay.
But
I can see that.
Yeah. Right next to the border and everything. Yeah. But so the Grand Canyon itself, like, it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but it was a little disappointing.
Was it big enough, or?
No, it was huge. The experience, like, so you show up to the Grand Canyon, and first of all, you go to a visitor center where you're supposed to take a bus out to some specific area where you can go look at the Grand Canyon. It's all hyper monetized, and and it really sucks the fun out of it. So I was a little let down, but the thing that I found most interesting, and if you're ever in, like, the Grand Canyon National Park area, they have a cavern system out maybe 10 miles from the Grand Canyon itself called Grand Canyon National Caverns or something like that. And it's amazing. So first of all, it's not for, like, the claustrophobic or the big boned, because there are definitely some parts, like, they have an entry level area that's all paved and everything, and it's nice and you can walk around in it. But if you really want the good stuff, there's a little caged off area that you can pay extra to go into, and you literally have to crawl through this. And at my size, it was quite a squeeze.
Oh, dang.
You crawl through this for maybe 20 feet or something, and then you're in this little area that the only people that have been in there are people like yourself who may have paid to go in there, and also the spelunkers. So the actual explorers themselves, you go all the way out to the very end as far as they've gone. Cool. Yeah, so it felt like something out of the Goonies. You're like shimmying along an edge to get past, like, a big pit and all this other stuff.
That's awesome. See, that's
infinitely more interesting than the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah.
So
it's like I went and saw some of the Mayan ruins when I was in Mexico.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, the Aztec or whatever. I was disappointed because, like, there was, in the part that I went, there was one, like, in my mind, I always think about it, you have the big staircase, and then the top of the pyramid where they do, like, their sacrifices or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever they do.
Throw virgins into a volcano.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, I just want to go up there. I want to walk up there. I want to see what it's like, and you can't get on any of it. Yeah. So
that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I know, which I get. Like, you don't want somebody falling down those steps, but yeah. So, anyways, stock market.
Mm-hmm. Transition.
That was a rough one. Dip in the stock market. So I didn't even notice this because I don't pay super close attention to stocks. But
right.
You're saying several sectors took a dip.
The S&P dropped 0.4%, which may not sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but as far as investing goes, that's quite a hit.
Okay. And because like on average you expect to get, like, I think the average, like, over time, just overall average on the stock market's been 8% in a year, or 8% a year, somewhere in there. And obviously these past few years have just been crazy.
A little rough.
Yeah, which the ups and downs, but overall it's been going up quite a bit. Now I think we touched on this in one of our previous episodes, but I think one of the reasons that this is happening, and if you have anything else, let me know, because obviously, like
right.
I said,
it's a very broad subject.
Yeah, I've got some stock, but I don't pay close attention. The Federal Reserve has, I think they've started, or they've announced that they're starting to pull back on buying back those bonds at 15 billion a month is what they're pulling back on. Which, if they're pulling back 15 billion a month, and this is a slow thing, I mean, that just tells you how much, how much they're losing, and the whole thing's ridiculous. But anyways, I think that's a big reason why everything's pulling back. And then Zillow. So you were talking about this, and it made me think of Zillow. They got into what they call the iBuyer game, which is what Open Door does. So where you don't want to list your property, you don't want to go through the hassle, or maybe you have a property that needs a lot of work, and they come in and they say, we'll give you X amount, you can set your close date, and it makes it really easy, but you're selling it at a discount. So and my advice, since we are realtors here, and this is what we do, if you're always going to get less money going through an Open Door or any type of iBuyer program.
Right, they're buying it with profit in mind.
Right, and they're going to have holding costs and everything else. Whereas if you're selling it to an end user, even if you have a house that's ugly, in this market, you're still going to do better, and you can sell it quickly. Like, it's not going to be this huge hassle that everybody thinks it is. There's a few exceptions, like if your house, a
little rough.
Yeah, real rough. Like, or if there's so much. If you're one of those people that you got so much stuff in each room you can't walk through it, then that's a different story. But yeah, so they got into this game, I don't know, a year or two ago.
Okay.
When Open Door finally, like, everybody's looking at Open Door like, wow, this company, thinks they're going to pull this off, and then they started to make a profit, and everybody's like, well, maybe we need to get into that now. And Zillow's made all of their money in the past from data and basically selling leads.
Right.
So they've become one of the biggest sources. Well, they got into this game and they did a lot of stuff wrong. And so now they've got 25% of their staff's being laid off. They've got 7,000 properties that they need to liquidate. They lost $328 million last quarter.
Right.
They're projecting to lose another $240 million on the fourth quarter. And so anyways, that stock has plummeted, which may be a good time to pick it up.
Yeah,
because once they get through all of their losses, they're going to get back to what they originally did, right?
Yeah. So for a little context for the people listening, with Zillow, whenever they buy a house, they have what is called holding cost, obviously, which is just the price of holding the property. And the way these companies usually work is whenever they buy a property, they'll fix it up to make it nice and pretty and update it more or less, and then they'll price it really high because they don't want to devote the resources to putting a lot of attention into any one property. So they'll price it high and sort of walk it back as it's been on the market longer and longer, which guarantees that they're going to sell it at the highest price available at that time that it's been on market. But given the market, houses are moving very quickly. So this business model may actually be a hindrance to them, causing it to be on the market long enough that people become skeptic and it ends up dropping lower than Zillow may have been accounting for. So that's where a lot of these losses are actually coming from.
Yeah, so like the holding costs are outweighing the time that it takes to figure out where that market's at. And yeah, this was one of the problems they had. They relied heavily on AI for their buying prices and everything else. And so one of the things I found interesting when I was looking into all this is whenever you go onto Zillow and you look at the Zestimate, they by design have that erring on the high side, because if you're a consumer and you go onto the website and you're like, my house is worth a little less than I thought it was, you're not going to do anything.
No.
But if you come on and you're just like, I'm curious, I know the market's good, and you look on there and you're like, wow, it's worth $20,000 or $50,000 more than I thought it was, then maybe I'm going to click some buttons, I'm going to contact somebody, and they're going to make money on it, right? So they have, they from the get-go, that Zestimate's never been there to be as accurate as possible. It's there to get clicks, right?
Right.
And get people to take action. And so I think they relied a lot on the algorithms that they had to create those estimates. And I think for that reason, they overpaid. I think Zillow was okay with overpaying, because in a lot of these markets, they also had the data on the appreciation and everything else. And so they thought, okay, well, if we overpay a little bit, it'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We're trying to gain market share. Anyways, I think in the long run that burned them. And it's a lot of what I'm seeing in the market right now.
Right.
So I've got a guy that was looking at a specific zip code, and the nice thing about this is there's just a ton of data. There's a ton of houses that move. It's a big neighborhood.
Right.
And it's south side of Fort Worth, South Hills, Wedgwood, if you're familiar with that. And there were just a lot of houses built back. These were mostly built in the I want to say 60s, late 50s, the early 70s.
Yeah, so mid-century.
Yeah. So they're all pretty similar houses, and so we've got a lot of data. And what's happened is you have these what I would call a lemon of a house, which is something that hasn't been updated in 30 or 40 years, but it's maybe a well-kept house. And then you have these really nice houses where somebody's gone in, they've done the new granite countertops, they've repainted it to the colors everybody like, maybe they've done the 4-inch baseboards, and as you would expect, those are selling for a lot more. And so as realtors, what we do, as you know, for the audience, so what we do is when we first start analyzing, we get all these properties that are similar, like what we just talked about. They're all in the same neighborhood, roughly same year built, same size, that kind of thing. And we can break it down and see what they're selling for price per square foot, which is a great place to start. And then really from there, if all things are the same, it's really just a matter of how nice the finish out is, right? Somebody's going to pay more for something that's bright and shiny.
Yeah, and up to date.
Yeah, and less for something that's covered in mud and looks like crap. So, anyways, let's just say for example, for whatever purposes, I don't know. For example purposes, I feel like that vernacular is not right.
I think they know what they mean.
Okay,
what you mean, though.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not good at using the words. So let's say that the really nice houses are selling at $150 a square foot.
Right.
And grandma's house is selling for $120 a square foot.
Okay.
What's happening right now is, because this market is so crazy and there's no inventory, is every once in a while you get an idiot that comes in and they pay top dollar for grandma's house, which makes no sense. So all of a sudden, as we're looking at it, and let's say you get 2 of those guys in the neighborhood, or 3, because there's probably 100 houses that are moving a month, right? There's a lot that's going on. So the chances of you having some idiot that just says, you know what, I don't care, I just need a house, I'll pay whatever, it happens. Not very often. So when we come to list your house, don't be like, I want an extra $100,000. It's not a good strategy. Yeah. Anyways, so a couple of those will hit. Then all of a sudden, all these houses that were lemons that were getting $120 a square foot, they see this and they're like, well, let's go $130 a square foot. And then the agents come in and they're like, well, a couple properties have sold at that, and they want to make the sell. And I think, in my opinion, they're doing their buyer clients a disservice, because if you look at that and say, okay, well, these 2 anomalies, yeah, we can justify it. Well, that doesn't mean that you should do it, right? Because they're anomalies. Now, if all the houses are selling up there, then yeah, okay, cool. And then the other problem is the appraisals. So the appraisers come in, and I think there is some pressure on appraisers they see the contract price, first of all, which I don't think that they should, if you want to be fair and unbiased about it. Right.
They should come in there with like a clean slate.
Yeah.
Take a look at it just like they would any other house.
Yep. Here's the data. Here's what I'm seeing. This is my opinion of the price. Anyways, that's not the way the real world works. So anyways, I think that is what's pushing this market up so quickly, because, I mean, I've seen houses that fluctuate, $20,000-$30,000 for the same piece of crap lemon house. And I'm just like, this makes no sense. These people should not be paying this much money for this compared to everything else. Like, they're the people that are going to get burned.
Right.
If the market stops, or it slows down, or if it turns around, those are the people that get burned. Now, if our market keeps going the same way, appreciating 20% a year, then they'll be
no
just
problem.
Fine, right? Yeah.
Smooth sailing.
Yeah. But anyways, that's the whole thing. So, the tangent there. But basically, I think Zillow probably thought that's probably okay because we know this market's appreciating, and
Mm-hmm.
at the end they got burned because they bought too high.
Right.
They bought a lemon at a peach price and then had to fix it up, sit on it, all that kind of stuff. But there may be an opportunity here. And they have 7,000 properties right now that they still need to liquidate.
Mm-hmm.
They may look at it and say, okay, as we know, the Federal Reserve is tapering back buying bonds. And so for that reason, interest rates are going to go up. If you watch our earlier podcast, you know all about this. But basically, they may look at it and say, okay, well, all of these houses that we bought in Michigan, we don't think this market's going to do too well. And so we're just going to offload these. But in a good market like ours, where I think it's just going to slow down, if not stagnate with prices,
Mm-hmm.
then they may say, okay, we're upside down on these houses. If somebody comes in and says, hey, we'll sign a corporate lease on these, give us 2 years or 3 years, and then Zillow looks at it and says, okay, cool, well then we won't have to show a loss on our statement. Hopefully the market continues where we think it's going to be, or if it doesn't, at least we'll have this revenue coming in. And so it's a win for them. It would be a win for you. So this is called rental arbitrage. So basically you sign a long-term lease, you pay long-term lease rate. So let's say that you get a property and it's $2,000 a month to lease it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you turn around, you furnish it, you put it on Airbnb and these short-term rental sites, and you make the spread there because people pay more for something that they're using short-term, right? So
Right.
it's just like, that's why you pay more at a hotel room than you would
Like an extended stay or something.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that do this, and if you're interested, it's a great way to get into rental real estate without having to buy properties because it takes a lot of cash to. Doesn't always.
Upfront cash.
There's other ways to do it, but yeah, if you're just buying a traditional rental property, it takes a lot of cash, right? So this is a whole thing that's popped up since Airbnb and these short-term rentals got popular, especially after COVID when you couldn't travel. So, anyways, could be a real good opportunity for somebody. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know Zillow's plan or what they're thinking, but it could be a solution for them.
Yeah, it's a fairly low risk as far as renters go for Zillow in this case, because they don't have to worry about you putting somebody in there that's going to suck for X amount of months. They only have to worry, like, at worst, maybe a bad weekend, and then that guy's out of there.
Yep. And then like Airbnb and all these different companies, they have this umbrella policy as well if something really crazy did happen. So
Yeah,
it's like a $2 million policy, I want to say.
Yeah, helps prevent issues like squatters and bigger situations like that. Because actually, my girl ended up, whenever she was a landlord, she ended up with a squatter as one of her renters. So she had been renting this property since like 2017, late 2017, and she had 3 people in there before. No problems. This 4th person that came in late 2018 started off great. They did a background check on her and everything, and it came up a little blank, which should have been a red flag, but there wasn't anything explicitly bad on there. So she, being the nice person, decided, we'll go ahead and rent to this person. No big deal. No bad marks on the record. And first couple of months, it was good. Around December time frame, she was late on her payment. My girl didn't think anything of it because it's the holidays. She was good for the past few months.
Right.
No big deal.
Maybe she overspent on kids' Christmas presents.
She was all about it, and then she ended up paying her late. January came around, and she didn't pay her at all. And now she's like, okay, lady, we need our check. Nothing. February, still nothing. And then we started talking to like lawyers and stuff to try and get something put together to get this lady out of there because we don't want to do anything the wrong way and get bit. So we end up doing that, and as soon as we start the process and all the gears start turning on this, coronavirus hit, and they came out with all sorts of sanctions, the moratorium and everything to protect renters and homeowners and stuff like that. Which I get, it's for a good cause and everything. Like, it helped a lot of people stay in their home, but unfortunately, there were a bunch of people, renters specifically, taking advantage of this, and we ended up with a squatter on our hands for about 6 months.
That's tough, And in the news, it's so much about the renters or whatever, but this was her only rental property.
Is it, at the time, yes. This is her first and only.
Yeah, so now she's floating a second mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's just got to make that payment when she's got no money coming in.
Yeah, it basically ate through her entire savings with the lawyer and everything on retention and everything. She didn't have a lot. She just got out of the military, so
that was the thing that bothered me, because like when they were making all these laws, like they always looked at it as like these big time investors that have hundreds of properties.
Right.
But yeah, like the people that they're trying to build wealth, and this is one of the ways they're doing it. They got burned. A lot of them did.
She got pretty screwed there, but we ended up getting it together. And whenever we went there, we got the lady out and everything. There was a bunch of stuff left behind, so obviously we go back and clean it up and whatever. We went in there and we checked out the situation she had, because so the way she ended up doing it was, we had the lady we were renting to who would live in the main unit, and then she had outfitted the garage, which had a side door. She had insulated the garage door, put a deadbolt on the door into the kitchen from the garage, and she had ended up subleasing that out during the time she was squatting to somebody else.
Isn't that crazy? Which
we actually think might have been the neighbor, because he kept coming in and like invasively looking around while we were cleaning things out. So I think he might have been privy to that in some way.
Wow. Maybe like he was involved, like he was the marketing end or something.
Maybe, I don't know. It might have been just doing drugs in there for all we know.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we're just going to commandeer this house. We're going to refit it. We're going to, somebody like that has like the balls and the ingenuity like to rent out part of their house or whatever, like you would think that they would be making money somehow, or they could figure out.
She has the entrepreneurell mindset. She just chooses to be a squatter.
Yeah, just went about it all the wrong way. It's crazy.
Yeah, but so a lot of the stuff that actually hit with coronavirus, like you were saying, it really hurt the renters and all that. Tarrant County is actually working to help that as well.
Okay.
Because their current renters assistance program, it wasn't quite as streamlined as they wanted it to be, and that kind of reared its ugly head here recently. Mm-hmm. So currently, whenever you apply for renters assistance, which is kind of like a grant or like a relief program for people to help pay their rent so they can stay where they are without screwing over the landlords, like they still get paid. It currently requires like a form of ID and a form of documents proving that you have some sort of income.
Right.
And then obviously it has a bunch of other government forms you have to fill out for the application.
Yeah, you have to I think you have to show you have an income, but that it's not sufficient.
Correct.
So you're working.
So within a bracket.
Yeah.
And like obviously whenever you go to fill out any sort of government form, like you've been to the DMV or anything like that, there's like 4 or 5 different forms, and they all have like the same info on them with like 1 or 2 things tweaked.
Yeah, one of them was made like 10 years ago, and it's not like it doesn't go anywhere, but it's required because nobody knows that works there. Like we don't know what this is for, but we know you have to have it.
It's just been the way it was, and they built their system around it, so it's not going anywhere. Well, Tarrant County is hoping to change that and streamline things. So they're trying to reduce the number of forms that you need for the application to the absolute minimum, nothing extra that isn't required to get this process through. And the reason for that is because they recently came under fire because they were approving applications for rental assistance with money that they didn't have. So there were these the judges that are actually making the decisions on the applications, yay or nay, if somebody's getting the renter's assistance, were approving applications for money that just wasn't in the bank. And a lot of it had to do with the way their system was set up, because obviously like judges, they're busy. Like they set court dates months in advance because they just have so much lined up on their schedule that when it comes to small stuff like this, even by the time it makes it to the judge, it's probably been sitting there, a couple of weeks maybe? So to reduce the amount of time stuff like this takes, they really need to batten down their hatches and get their systems straight, if you will, and cut out all the extra fat here.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember, so this is also called what they call Section 8 housing, which has a negative connotation to it. But a few years back, I bought one of these properties that already had a Section 8 tenant in it. And as you know, and I know, and your girlfriend knows from the squatter story, the most important thing whenever you're renting out a house is who you let in it.
Right.
Because it's very difficult to get people out sometimes. And so anyways, I was in one of these classes, and somebody asked the instructor, they're like, how many Section 8 people do you have a problem with? Because that's the biggest fear.
Right.
It's like, hey, if somebody can't afford to pay rent, then I'm worried. right?
Yeah.
So the nice thing is, like on mine, it's like 70% of rent comes from Tarrant County.
Mhm.
So that's a check that shows up every month. I don't have to worry about that. It's just the remaining 30% that they're responsible for. So it mitigates some of your risk. But the like worst case scenario is they come in, they destroy the house.
Right, the property getting
and they
damaged.
Yeah, and they don't pay you. And so, anyways, the guy was like 20%. He was just, yeah.
It's a big number.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, 20%. Like 80%, awesome people,
No
great
problems.
renters. Yeah, but the 20% was like, And I was just surprised he was that candid, because
Right.
it was, the class was about learning about Section 8 and how it works and whether you want to do it or not. Because, so like you were saying, this was happening back then too. All these people had vouchers, or I don't know if it's a certificate, whatever that says they qualify for the program. But there's two problems. One, you have to find a house or a landlord that will rent to Section 8. Like, it's something, anybody can do it, but they have
Right.
to say yes. But there's this negative connotation going around. And then two, there has to be funding. And so that was the other problem, is they were out of funding then too.
And so you had this issue where a bunch of people were going around under the guise of the idea that they were approved for this program, and then they're going in, putting in all these applications for rent and spending all this time and energy, and then it just doesn't come to fruition. The government has to come back and say, hey guys, sorry, you're screwed. Like, and there's nothing they can do. Like, it's not on them, it's not on necessarily the judges either, because like they don't know, like they weren't kept abreast of the situation. Somebody somewhere in the chain said, hey, stop. And then by the time it made it to the people actually signing off on these, it was way beyond help, unfortunately.
It's just kind of a bad situation for those folks trying to find something. So moral of the story is, if that's you, maybe look for a new job.
There's plenty out there. DFW.
There are plenty. There's everywhere you go. It's like there's somebody wants.
Yeah, and now hiring or help wanted signs somewhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere in the U.S. too. I was in North Carolina a few weeks ago. It was crazy. Like, I was at a Quick Trip, which is like, shout out, my favorite gas station, because like they got it right. They're like, people don't want to wait in a line to check out. Right. And so that was the first thing I noticed when I first experienced QT. Is like, as soon as that line got like 3 people long, you know, if somebody was mopping, if somebody was doing, they came to the cash register, and I was like, yes,
and they have like 4 or 5 of them set up, so you just go and knock it out real quick.
Well, so a lot of these have the kitchens in them now, which I'm a huge fan of. There's a chicken bacon ranch flatbread. Oh. Yeah, I know you're like gas station.
Yeah, at the gas station. But I've been to QT's. It's better than you think.
Yeah, but anyways, it was closed down. It was like everything was closed down as far as the kitchen goes, and they had signs up everywhere. It's like, we don't have enough staff. We can't keep the kitchen open. Right. They had trouble stocking. There just weren't enough people to work.
Yeah, it's a mix of high demand for employment and big issues with supplies prices given the situation as well.
Yeah, just crazy.
Just a bad mix.
It's a weird time. Yeah. But anyways, I think that's all we got for today.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
All right. See ya.